Yeah, I had some free time this Wednesday, so I thought I'd show up and talk a little bit. I'm a psychiatrist. I've been in practice for many years now, and I've seen a lot of different patients over the years. This particular subject I'm talking about tonight, well, first I guess I should see if my slides work. If they don't work, oh, that's a bad thing. Seriously? Okay. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is the pernicious nature of pornography. Okay? It's something that I deal with in my patients all the time because it's an issue with both Christians and with non-Christians. It affects a lot of relationships. About 60% of marriages now cite pornography addiction as a major factor in their divorces. That's a pretty big deal. Okay? A few years ago, I had a couple in my office, and they had a disagreement. He was addicted to pornography, and she felt that was a violation of the marriage vow thing, okay? And he didn't have any problem with it. And he wanted to know, okay, basically, besides using the Bible and Leviticus and biblical morality, is there any way you can tell me that this is wrong? I mean, because our society applauds it. It's in mainstream television practically. There are some governments over there in Europe where their populations are dwindling, where they're encouraging people to watch pornography, thinking that's going to raise their population. Okay? So it's mainstream in so many ways. And so, do we have anything besides Bible verses to say that it's bad for you? Well, actually we do. And the thing is that anytime God tells us something, he tells us, stay away from this, or do this. And anytime he gives us a prohibition, he does it to protect us or to provide for us. He has something good that he wants to give us, and if we engage in that, we're going to lose. He doesn't want us to lose. And so he gives us these rules. And they're not capricious, they're not arbitrary. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Actually, people in the secular world are starting to wake up and realize that pornography is actually a bad thing. Unfortunately, it's been accepted for so long, it's out there, it's in the water now, and it's hard to undo it. It's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. When I was in college, if you wanted to look at pornography, you had to go to some seedy, adult bookstore somewhere downtown, and the parking lot was out there, and every time you drive by it, as guys, you'd look at there and going, oh, I wonder what's in there. You want to kind of go look, but you don't do it because you gotta. What if somebody sees you? It's just the humiliation of doing that, And so every time you do that, that was enough deterrent for me. I'm not going over there. I'm not going to get seen. It's embarrassing and everything. Now, that has entirely changed. That whole era where you had to go someplace special and secret and spooky in order to look at that kind of stuff, that is so gone. Anybody with a cell phone, okay, it's on TV, anybody with a computer, anybody with a cell phone, it's on demand 24/7 now, okay? That changes the game quite a bit, okay? That's a problem. Now, what is bad about it? Well, what's bad about it? Okay. It affects something called our sexual script. Okay, our sexual script is essentially how your brain works. It's how your brain interprets normal sexuality. What does normal sexuality look like? What is it supposed to be? Unfortunately, many of our children, because they get pornography exposure very early in life now. Very early. I mean, most people get their first exposure to pornography at home at this time. Okay? If you give your kid a cell phone and you don't put an internet filter on there and block that stuff out, they've got it. Or if they go to school and they have friends with cell phones, they got it. It is so difficult to keep them from seeing this stuff. And so their first exposures to sex, unfortunately, are the porn industry. And it presents a script that is very, very different than what God intended. If you take a look at biblical morality and what the sexual script should be, it's quite different. In pornography, you take a look at what sex is supposed to be, and you see a superhighway. It goes very fast. You meet somebody, hey, how you doing? You look cute. You too. Hey, you know what? There you go. That's all it takes. Okay? So it goes very fast. it doesn't just involve man and wife, but any man or woman, or any man and man, or man and woman, or woman, woman, man, 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 or whatever. Any species of animal, okay? So we got all those animals, those are part of it. And then you got objects, metal, wood, plastic, whatever. And so basically any of those variations are fair game, and pornography calls that legitimate sex. And when people consume that, what happens is that becomes programmed into your system as a normal expectation. Now, men are more susceptible to it than women, but women are starting to get caught up in this as well. Okay? Now, think about, you've heard the term entropy before? Entropy has to do with disorder. The higher the entropy, the more disorder. Okay? Things with low entropy are highly ordered and specific. Now, you can quantify entropy by the number of variations that you can recognize something as itself. For example, if I were to take an egg and splat it onto the ground, how many variations of a broken egg could you see and still recognize it as a broken egg? Billions and billions of possible configurations. And your brain would still say, broken egg. Yep, another broken egg. And yet another broken egg. They're all different, but your brain recognizes broken egg because a broken egg can take many different configurations. It's a high entropy state. Okay, high entropy meaning many different configurations, and it's still that thing. Now, what about an intact, viable egg? How many configurations do you see there? They all kind of look the same. They might be bigger or smaller, but for a viable egg to be a viable egg, the shell goes on the outside, the white, and then the yolk sac, okay? Or the chicken or whatever's growing inside there, and that's the viable egg. When you start mixing them up, it's no longer a viable egg. A viable egg is a low entropy thing, okay? Now, pornography presents sex as a high entropy endeavor. Lots of variations, lots of novelty. Okay? Now, why is that dangerous? It has to do with the way our brain chemistry works. All right, let me step back a little bit and let's talk about why pornography is pleasurable. I'm going to come back to that. There are several pleasure pathways in the brain. The primary pleasure pathway is through a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of pleasure. Whenever you do something like drink water or eat a meal when you're hungry, you get dopamine release at an area in the brain called the nucleus accumbens. And you go, okay? The hungrier you are, the more pleasure you get. Right? If you use illegal drugs, heroin, for example, causes a dopamine response. Gives you pleasure. Cocaine, even more pleasure. If you have sex or think about sex, you get dopamine release. And that gives you a source of pleasure, and that's why it's addictive, because anything that gives you that pleasure and control can be addictive because it's pleasure. They did an experiment several years ago on monkeys to see what would happen if you give the monkey control of their pleasure. Now, the reason they were going for this is they were saying, you know what, maybe we can use that for pain control. Because it's an opiate thing, right? Opiates ultimately result in dopamine release at the nucleus accumbens. So what if we put an electrode in people's brains and gave them a little button so that they could turn themselves on anytime? Just push the button and they get the pleasure automatically without drinking or eating or doing anything. You can just automatically get the pleasure. And they did that for all these monkeys. So you had 40, 50 monkeys with buttons on them, right? All they had to do was push the button and they did it. What happened? 100% mortality. They all died. They didn't eat, they didn't drink, they didn't sleep all day long until they died. Okay? And so they decided that might not be a good way to control pain for people. All right, so dopamine is a very powerful, pleasurable thing, when it's released, and that's the appeal of sexuality. And that works for sex, period. Now, the thing is that there are several other pathways that result in pleasure. One of those pathways is novelty. Whenever God wanted us to learn things, He wanted us to be curious. He wanted us to develop technologically, and He wanted us to be able to build houses and learn new things and figure out how plants work for us and what we can eat and what we shouldn't eat. And so He gave us curiosity. And we're curious. We are actually rewarded for learning new things. When you learn new things, dopamine is released in an area near the center of the brain, in part of the basal ganglia. And when that happens, you get rewarded. Okay? So it's called the insular cortex. Whenever you get dopamine at the insular cortex, that's what happens when you learn something new. One of the things when people come in and they're very anxious and depressed, a lot of times their worlds are very small and they're not learning anything new. They watch the same TV shows over and over again and do the same things, and they never learn anything new. Learning new things is a part of the pleasure of life. Okay? So novelty. When you learn something new, you get a buzz at that particular site. That's called novelty. All right? Now, we have another reward system called excitement. Excitement. There are several kinds of excitement. There's anticipatory excitement, like when you go on eBay and you order something, you come and you wait for the box to come, and it's like, okay, you're like in a good mood because you know it's coming anytime. Okay? When you see the box, that's like the highlight. When you see the box on the porch, and then it goes down from there because you got it. Now you want something else. Right? But that's anticipatory excitement. It's part of your pleasure system. And then there is the risk-associated excitement. People that jump out of airplanes, for example, with parachutes, they enjoy that because they like the thrill. Not everybody likes that. Okay? You have to have a certain personality to really get off on that sort of thing. Okay? But some people really enjoy taking those risks, and that gives them that's a different neurotransmitter. It's not dopamine. In this case, the neurotransmitter is norepinephrine. It's adrenaline. They're adrenaline junkies. They love that thrill. So the thrill of taking risks. Now, what happens with pornography and with an affair or with other types of hookups and things like that? What happens there? What happens is that all of those pleasure pathways come together. You have dopamine from the sexual encounter and the anticipation. You have dopamine in the insular cortex from the novelty effects because somebody knew something new. And then you have the excitement. It's wrong. It's taboo. The fact that it's wrong, the fact that you might be caught and bad things might happen to you, actually is stimulating, and it contributes to the reward factor. So you get a triple bonus instead of one reward pathway, you get 3 all up front. What's wrong with that? It enhances the whole experience. Yeah, it does. But the cost is high. The cost is very high. It's kind of like marijuana. They get it when they first take it, it helps them relax, but the more you take, the more paranoid you become because it knocks out your serotonin receptors and you can't relax. It jacks up your norepinephrine, and so it makes you less trusting and more likely to go off and be angry at people. Okay, you become increasingly isolative over time. The more you use, your memory shrinks 1% per year. You lose the amygdala, you lose the hippocampal volumes. So it becomes a problem.